What you're about to watch isn't just a disagreement between two commentators. It's a clash between confidence rooted in experience and confidence rooted in partisan certainty. And that's what makes this exchange so interesting. Because when Charles Blow enters these conversations, he brings something that often disrupts political talking points: perspective. He doesn't simply react to the argument in front of him. He examines the assumptions underneath it. And when that happens, people who are used to repeating a familiar narrative sometimes find themselves on much shakier ground than they expected. Here's what that really exposes. In today's political environment, there are often attempts to tell critics what they should say, what they shouldn't say, and even how they should interpret what they're seeing with their own eyes. But democracy depends on the opposite principle. It depends on open debate, independent judgment, and the willingness to challenge claims no matter where they come from. And this is where democracy meets denial. When someone tries to police the conversation, instead of defending their position with evidence, it can signal a deeper problem. Confidence in the narrative may be stronger than confidence in the facts. We've seen this before. Some of the most revealing political moments happen when a confident talking point collides with someone who refuses to be intimidated by it. Not through shouting, not through theatrics, but through direct, clear-eyed accountability. So as we watch this clip, pay attention to more than just who speaks the loudest. Listen closely to who is actually engaging with the substance of the argument, and who seems uncomfortable when that substance is challenged. Because facts still matter, even when they're inconvenient. And in a healthy democracy, nobody gets to dictate the truth simply because they're confident enough to say it.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Tonight, a split-screen job interview for two of the most important positions in the government. Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton were grilled on Capitol Hill today, trying to convince senators that they could be the next Attorney General and the next Director of National Intelligence, respectively. They were trying to do a delicate dance, giving answers that would satisfy President Trump and answers that won't sink their nominations, given that Republicans have a thin majority in the Senate right now. Now, Blanche immediately came under fire for his involvement in a number of controversial moves by the DOJ, including the handling of the Epstein files, his past comments on Trump's January 6 pardons, Trump's lawsuit against the IRS, and that so-called slush fund that came from that settlement. Now, Blanche couldn't escape the concerns about his past role as the president's former personal attorney, something that he actually brought attention to and very ill-timed slip-up.
Are you and President Trump friends?
I'm his lawyer, was his lawyer, and now I'm the Deputy Attorney General.
Blanche was also challenged about that $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. At least one Republican on the Judiciary Committee isn't convinced that the fund is really and truly dead.
Did Todd Blanche satisfy your concerns about the weaponization fund?
Well, basically he confirmed that it's not dead. He agreed that it could be enforced as a matter of contract.
Does that concern you?
Yeah.
I mean, does that mean that how does that affect your decision about whether to vote for him or not?
Well, I have to put that in the mix.
So you're truly undecided right now.
Yeah.
Retired U.S. District Judge Shira Shendlin joins us in our fifth seat. But before we open it up here to the table, we want to invite you at home to join the debate. Go to cnn.com/Abby and weigh in there. We'll get to some of your comments as we go through the show. Judge Shendlin, let's start with Todd Blanche, because I think his candidness, or perhaps lack thereof in some cases, is part of the issue here. And did you get the sense from what you've seen at this hearing that he made a good show of what you think the Justice Department should be about, if you, in fact, believe that it should be independent of the president's will?
Well, I do believe it should be independent of the president, and that the Attorney General should serve the United States, be loyal to the Constitution, and therefore to the people. But it hasn't seemed that way in the time he's been the Deputy Attorney General, now the Acting Attorney General. He seems to continue to feel as if he's the president's lawyer. In so many ways, I have found his performance disappointing, to say the least. And I can give you some of the reasons for that. People he's gone after without much justification, seem to be the president's perceived enemies, as if the president is saying, please prosecute the following people. And that's
Which
not...
he has
said it.
said.
He said...
He has, in fact, said that, yeah.
Well, he said it directly to Pam
Yeah,
Bondi.
to
He
Pam
said, I
Bondi,
want you to do this. But even since Blanche has been there, he seems to have continued that by continuing to go after James Comey for the seashells on the beach, which really doesn't sound like a criminal case to me, to going after certain other people, Tish James, John Brennan, a whole list of folks that seem to be the president's chosen enemy. So that's one thing I would fault him for. Secondly, this fake settlement, this weaponization fund and the immunity from prosecution on the tax audits, that was very troubling because the lawyers were not honest with the court. And that's a big problem. To tell the court there's no settlement when there is a settlement, that's not right. And that's been going on.
And he was caught in this today, Michael, because he acknowledged that he kept saying it's dead, but he acknowledged that there's actually nothing in writing that says that it's dead. And there's nothing in writing that says that the president, who's the plaintiff, can't try to revive it by basically saying, we have a deal and it's written down here and you said you were going to create this fund. So, I mean, how is he to be believed? And it sounds like John Cornyn, who's going to be a pivotal vote, doesn't believe him.
Yeah, look, that's a point of consternation, I think, for the individuals that are tasked with ultimately getting him confirmed. I've been through this process before during the first Trump administration, having a nominee ultimately go before a committee, going through the murder board process, sitting with Dems, sitting with Republicans. And sometimes you do have to make concessions to get your person across the finish line. And I think listening to Manu's question to Senator Cornyn, they may have to go back and put this in writing in order to get his vote. Now, there's a couple ways this could work out. He could ultimately vote to get him out of committee, but then say, I'm not going to vote for him on the floor. And so I think if you're the Sherpa, you have to be very, very careful with not losing votes here. So I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but I think you may have to put this thing in writing and say, look, this is over. This is a done deal.
Let me play. This is Jay Clayton. He's the guy that Trump has chosen to become the director of national intelligence. And obviously, Trump has been very clear. He wants that office to now be concerned with his 2020 election conspiracies and so on and so forth. This is Clayton answering questions about just a basic question of fact. Listen.
Who won the 2020 I'm not, this is like, I'm here to talk about my qualifications.
So he won the election.
He followed our process, had the most electoral votes, was declared the winner.
You refuse to answer a simple matter of fact about the 2020 election. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
Then answer the question. Who won the 2020 election?
I have answered the question.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer? You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election, but you asked to lead America's intelligence community?
Lydia, that's kind of embarrassing and maybe a little concerning if, intelligence is what he wants to have the job of doing. If he can't just state a fact, how can he do that other job?
I mean, he'd been asked, I think, 3 times at that point, and he did mince words. I would have liked him just to say yes and put an end to the discussion. But there's a lot of theatrics at these kind of hearings. John Ossoff got his soundbite, and Republicans kind of do the same thing. They love to ask, what is a woman? And Ketanji Brown Jackson couldn't answer. A lot of people still can't answer that question. So to me, it's theatrics. I do have to say, it's funny. I feel like we've sat at this table so many times and bashed Pam Bondi and Bill Pulte. And I kind of thought maybe people would be glad to have Jay Clayton and Todd Blanche, people who are eminently qualified for these jobs. And I think at the end of the day, it's a question of, do you want Jay Clayton or do you want Bill Pulte?
I actually think that
the two people that were on the Hill today.
Wait, hold on. The two people now, but he couldn't do it.
The two people that were on the Hill today. I know you're trying to get a social media clip, Charles, but
do you know?
I think Savino is trying to talk. I know you're trying to get your social media clip for the gotcha. I answered your question already, but I'm also not here to answer to you. So
I'm happy that you told me that because I really appreciate. I'm sorry.
No.
I really appreciate you lecturing me about what I'm here to do because I'm here because Abby's show invited me here. and I have been in journalism for a very long time. In fact, I came to the New York Times the year that you were born. So I suggest that you choose a lane that is your own and stay in it, and don't lecture me, because I won't be lectured by a child. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
So I think, to what Lydia was saying about these people being qualified, I would disagree that these are qualified individuals. I think what you saw on the Hill were two people that are quite grossly not qualified for the offices that they're seeking and will do the bidding, to the point that you're making. They're supposed to serve the American people. The Attorney General is meant to be a check on the administration, on the president, and they're meant to be objective and serving the public. And what you saw today, even when Todd Blanche slipped up and said, I'm the president's lawyer, you're actually not. You're actually the lawyer, the Attorney General for the public. And so I think what was displayed on Capitol Hill today, yes, you're right. There were theatrics, but they weren't wrong. I mean, facts are facts. I mean, who won the election in 2020? Is the sky blue? I mean, that is a very easy question that could have been answered, and yet there was a struggle. So I do think you have unqualified people up there. I do think the Senate ultimately probably rallies around these two individuals.
And I would say that on the Clayton issue, there are people who, our friend Ellie Honig in the last hour made a very compelling case that he is not qualified.
Yeah, but
to be DNI.
he has no background.
He has no background in intelligence. Actually,
I think, look, I agree that the Attorney General should not curry favor for an individual, but adhere to the Constitution. I think most of us at the table would probably agree with that. But as it pertains to Todd, I think it's hard to say he's not qualified. I mean, the guy was at Southern District of New York, moved up through the ranks. Ellie Honig actually worked with him. The current Attorney General for New York, Alvin Bragg, worked with him as well. So it's okay to disagree. Yeah. I'm going to give you the room for that.
But
you have the right to do that.
But the Cornyn question is the real question here, because Cornyn has offered the same objection to all of them. Sure. Merrick, to Bundy, and now to Blanche, which is he's saying, I need to make sure that you can tell me that the DOJ will be independent of the president.
That's a legitimate
right. That is a very,
and
he is not there.
And that's why I said, though, Charles,
I do have to make one important point.
Your Honor, go ahead.
This is a man who said that his administration and he are at war with the judiciary. That's a terrible thing to have said. Nobody should be at war with the judiciary. There are three co-equal branches of government, as we know. He also has called judges rogue. He has also criticized their opinions in a way that's not appropriate. So, and he and his people have been disrespectful and lied to the court, such that there's no longer a presumption of regularity, which means that judges no longer believe DOJ lawyers. 16,000 people have left the DOJ since this man got here, because they worked on cases that the president thinks were wrongly brought against him. So they were just summarily fired.
Let me just play another interaction. He was asked about his comments about the January 6th pardons by a senator. And I'm going to play what he said in the hearing today and what he actually said in that appearance that was being questioned about. Listen.
And you've bragged that bringing justice for violent rioters meant that every one of them was either pardoned or had their sentence commuted.
Almost everything the senator just said, and he's protected, he's allowed to lie, but almost everything he just said was absolutely false. I wasn't celebrating it, I was merely stating a fact.
If you look at what happened to the men and women convicted because of January 6th, by 5 p.m. on January 20th, every one of them was either pardoned or had their sentence commuted, okay? So when folks say you've done nothing, I say you have a very short memory.
I don't know. I mean, it does very much sound there that he's defending the decision to pardon these rioters.
That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, he tried to thread the needle today by saying that, that it was right to prosecute them, but also not condemning Trump's decision to pardon them. So how do you have it both ways? Either they did something that was horrible and they needed to be prosecuted and therefore punished for it, and also say, well, the president has the absolute right to do whatever he wants to do, and I'm not going to comment on that.
Well, but he did say to get some votes, he did say, and we'll look into the way the pardon power is exercised. So he kind of threw a bone, I thought.
We don't believe
That's
that.
just sort of like
We don't
that
believe
saying that and
Yeah.
nothing are the same thing
Yeah.
because there is nothing he can do about the
I
late
understand that.
appointment
I
hours.
understand that.
And he said that.
I said he was throwing a bone to try to get those last votes.
Yeah, all right. Judge Shira Shendlin, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you. Next for us, after MAGA.
And this reaction gets at something bigger than any single television exchange. Pause. It's not really about scoring points against one commentator or celebrating a political takedown. It's about a frustration that many voters feel when they watch public officials and nominees being evaluated through the lens of loyalty rather than public service. Here's what that really exposes. In a democracy, the fundamental question shouldn't be, how loyal are you to a political figure? The question should be, how committed are you to the Constitution, the rule of law, and the people you're supposed to serve? Those are very different standards. And when those standards become blurred, public trust starts to erode. That's why debates over nominations matter so much. They're not just personnel decisions. They're signals about what qualities are being rewarded in government. Competence matters, independence matters, integrity matters, and perhaps most importantly, the willingness to tell the truth even when it's politically inconvenient matters. Listen closely. This is the tell. When a public official struggles to acknowledge widely established facts, many Americans see more than a simple political calculation. They see a test of whether evidence still has a place in our public institutions, because facts are not supposed to change depending on who benefits from them. That's one of the foundations of democratic accountability. And this is where the broader concern comes into focus. If the expectation becomes personal loyalty first and public responsibility second, then the system starts moving away from serving citizens and towards serving powerful individuals. That's not a partisan concern, that's a democratic one. Now, reasonable people can disagree about nominees, qualifications, and policy priorities. That's normal. That's healthy. Democracy depends on vigorous disagreement. But those disagreements work best when they're grounded in facts, transparency, and a shared commitment to the truth. At the end of the day, voters have every right to ask tough questions of the people seeking powerful positions. In fact, that's exactly what democracy requires. Accountability isn't hostility, it's responsibility, and the stronger our institutions are, the more capable they are of withstanding scrutiny. That's the takeaway here. Personal loyalty may help someone gain influence, but public trust is earned through honesty, independence, and a demonstrated commitment to serving the American people. And in the end, that's what democracy requires. Leaders who serve the public, respect the facts, and remain accountable to the people, not to any one individual. Because when accountability wins, democracy is stronger for it.